them, even in some of my colleague senators on the other side, one was waiting persons who, honorable senators who hold very important ministries, such as the Minister of Tourism, for instance, took his time throwing pot shots when I really wanted to hear what he was doing in the ministry. So the Minister of Trade has lamented that the service sector really earns little or no foreign exchange. But, Mr. Vice President, this is not for lack of industry. There is good potential here, just within the food sector, for instance. We have the Harfords of Mario's Pizza, we have Joe's Pizza, we have the Pizza Boys brand, which I'm familiar with, and Rituals Coffee House. All these are homegrown, and they have the potential, based on the initiative of these really great entrepreneurs, they have the potential to grow into global brands as big as Domino's, Wendy, or Starbucks, if it is the government is really serious about what they are saying with this public-private, and how do you leverage what is out there. Because, again, in the limited time the Minister of Tourism gave himself, and he spoke about the KLM airlift arrangement, which of course is a good arrangement. You're always happy when there is airlift, because that's the most important thing in terms of persons, visitors, relatives, the diaspora accessing Trinidad and Tobago. CAL and its routes, they are insufficient to service, well, of course, our needs in a sense, but also there is need to drum up more marketing and awareness. And I know there is a $360,000 marketing budget. Mr. Vice President, through you, I tell the Minister of Tourism, I think that is inadequate, quite frankly, because this flight comes via Bridgetown. And many times, for those of us who would have traveled, sometimes you see BA coming via St. Lucia, or there's a flight coming via Bridgetown or Grenada. And many times, the flight empties in these islands just prior to, and we are making the same contribution. Sometimes we give additional concession on fuel and other charges, etc. So this is something we really have to look at to ensure that when the KLM comes down here, because this access point is really a valuable opportunity for Trinidad, the Trinidad, and for me particularly the Tobago market, because I don't think any of the islands, as beautiful as they are, as beautiful as the beaches are, could compete with the beaches of Tobago, particularly Man of War Bay and the snorkeling that is there. And I mean, of course, any one of my other Tobago-born senators can argue that, because this is a thing of pride in Tobago, who has the better beaches. So, Mr. Vice President, what one needs is the collaboration, cohesiveness, and seamlessness in this new normal. And that's what I'm suggesting, that with respect to this public-private and maybe KLM, etc., that we roll it all up. Give these people an opportunity. I think the Minister of Tourism did mention that they are having some trade shows, or whatever they call them, into Holland. And, of course, I think you have to pinpoint the businesses that you think it is most possible and probable to be able to extend their brands, and maybe they may be able to contribute even to your own marketing dollar, and you put it in one pool for everybody, because these folks, and just a few I named, I'm sure the Minister of Trade will know quite a few more, that lend themselves to franchises, etc. And this is a big and ready pool of Forex just waiting for us to tap in, because I have not eaten any of these pizzas that we import. We have the license, we have to pay for Forex for license fees that are better than those that are made in Trinidad and Tobago for Trinidad and Tobago. I think when I looked, I think on the papers very recently, and saw that Carib had contracted, and Senator Roberts spoke about that, contracted this DJ Khaled. And really in this marketing campaign for World of Change. And the tagline is, I'm going to take you to the world's most exciting playground. I mean, this makes you feel as if you're in the south of France or one of these very exotic European destinations. And we have it here. And I think that is branding. Why don't we jump on that? We continue to focus at this time on an investment in the San Fernando waterfront. And I'm not saying we don't need to upgrade and improve and build a San Fernando waterfront, but in this time of competing priorities, the opportunity cost of many things that we need, maybe investing in these SMEs with potential to earn us forex, because we still, I did not hear where we are really making an effort, and I think it was Senator Vera and they who made that point in terms of the non-energy sector. This is a major sector that we have to put everything into it to develop. So I'm saying the money that we are using, how is San Fernando waterfront at this time going to generate for us much needed US forex? And pay back even the US dollars we may have to borrow to develop. And I'm not saying that don't do it, but perhaps it may have to be some kind of delayed gratification. So I think the government really needs to go back to the drawing board instead of doubling down the way I saw Mr. Vice President, the Minister of Energy would have doubled down on the addiction to oil and gas. Mr. Vice President, patriotism is not the definition as preferred generally by the Minister of Works and Transport in trying to escape criticism for roads being the worst in the history of our country. Trinidadians and Tobagonians have a deep and enduring love for their country. And sometimes it's just expressed in the way we'll just turn up predictably at a doubles line or the coconut vendor, or even walk the Queen's Park Savannah. It just shows how much we love this space. If you walk the Chancellor Hill, you'll see a lot of people up and down. They have music playing. And what music? Soca music. And that really is something that happens very frequently. You have this little phone and it's playing loudly. So they are not allowing the energy to die. They play this music on their mobile devices. So we have the government really has never found ways to support this abundance of viable and creative ideas to package our cultural products. Although the Minister of Digital Transmission speaks eloquently of made in Trinidad and Tobago for Trinidad and Tobago, but of course he has just come into the mix with respect to that. Mr. Vice President, during this same pandemic, South Korea found a way to have something they call contactless concerts. They are not brighter than us or have more content than us. We are content rich. In Tobago, we spend an entire period with this thing called the Heritage Festival when we showcase the food, the dance, the music, the way of life, even just the smell of how you cook that food, the authenticity around the fireside, the dirt oven, the clothing, everybody is in character in the village. These are things that we can package, just as Korea has done. As I said, they have this thing called contactless concert. We have so much content here. And, the performance, they combine augmented reality technology with 3D graphics and interactive live video calls between fans and artists. And they make millions of dollars in US for their country. As a matter of fact, very recently, for those of us who look at Netflix, there is a new show called The Squid Game. And it's a South Korea fictional drama in which contestants, who are deeply in debt, play children's game. Well, this one was what? A red light, green light, stop. And in order to win a ton of, something as simple as that. But what it has happened is that it has become Netflix's largest enterprise so far. It's very unprecedented as far as they are concerned. And with that content, Netflix now has decided to invest $500 million US into Korea for more content for this year alone. The Minister of Finance did speak about we need one big idea. And he's probably right, because one big idea I remember years ago, looking at my television, there was Bill Gates and he was moving around some cards on a table. And Steve Jobs took that and created what is now the Apple phone that we can put on. And that was the first $1 trillion market cap company in the world. And now it's worth over just over $2 trillion, one company, right? And that was an idea. I remembered seeing Bill Gates just moving around these big cards, and it ended up as apps on the iPhone. And so our people are brilliant. They are so creative. Very recently, I was looking at some program that Senator Roberts had, and he played a piece of music, and I just looked it up on YouTube, and it wasn't soca. That was a young man from Trinidad and Tobago singing there. So as I said, this Squid Game that has taken the world by storm is now being played in 90 countries. And the producer, the developer says, we always believe that the most locally authentic shows will travel best. So having a show that's about really authentic Korean games and characters become really big, not only in Korea, but also globally. It is such an exciting moment for us. So there are things we can do because, as I said, we don't have to go out too far and look. Our people are just so talented, just the way we speak, the way in Tobago, we just tell a lot of stories. There's a way we are always just natural storytellers. So it's a matter of harnessing that. Mr. Vice President, recently again, I'm seeing where it is Afghanistan, where they are managed by Talibans, prescribed by the US government as a terrorist group. And girls are learning to write code, and they find programming work in areas like web development, game development, mobile app development, and graphic design. Their goal is to empower a whole new generation of female tech leaders. So this week in the debate, I know the Minister of Local Government, he congratulated the workers of CPEP, and yes, they are doing a great job, but I believe that there's an over-representation of young people in that program. They can be put to much better use. We need the landscaping, we need the cleanup, but these are our young, the most promising that we have. And this is the time to harness them. And I think that is why I felt, for me this year, the most anticipated presentation was from the Minister of Digital Transformation. Because 2020 started with news of the pandemic. And the presence of COVID-19 throughout 2020 introduced great challenges to governments around the world. It's a high health crisis which brought with it consequent economic turmoil. And the common domain for successfully addressing the twin challenges of health and economic crisis was the technological infrastructure of countries. People, as we know, and firms had to adapt. And again, we missed an opportunity because the students who had been benefiting from these laptops every year, by this time, if that had continued into 2020, when the pandemic had hit, we would have been, we wouldn't be where Estonia is, that the government is on a model, but certainly we'd have been in a much better position with our children. There's just been so much loss by a lot of our school-age children not being able to access their education. So the Senator Barkas, through you, Mr. Vice President, said the government's role will be how it addresses policy moving forward and how they address the question of fostering innovation. Yes, how do you kind of harness innovation? Again, the Minister of Finance said, what we need may be one big idea. I remember in 1995, I was the managing director of the PTSE, and I was buying books, business books from a little outfit, a small outfit named Amazon at the time. And books about Jack Welch of GE, all these were gurus at the time, Sandy Weil of Citibank, Meg Whitman of eBay, Carly Fiorina of Hewlett-Packard. That's where they were at that time. And it was almost a startup. They went through a lot of ups and downs. But a New York Times report of May 12, 2021 has said, I'm quoting Mr. Vice President, with the pandemic shifting sales online and consumers flush with stimulus checks, Amazon on Thursday, that is this year, reported $108.5 billion in sale in the first 3 months of the year, up 44% from a year earlier. So the minister is right. We need a good idea. But we wouldn't stumble into it. We have to plan for it. We have to work for it. We have to show up for that bright idea and that big idea, as Senator Vera referenced. So again, the New York Times of April 29, 2021 said, with the onset of the pandemic, Amazon experience was a counter to Reuters July 2020. While rival brick and mortar retailers have had to shut stores during government-imposed lockdown, Amazon had 175,000 people. As a child, you would have heard in school, if you went to Charlottesville Methodist, if you fail to prepare, you be prepared to fail. Belmont boys have say try and try again, boys, one day you'll succeed, but we don't want to be in that. We want to be preparing all the time so that we will succeed. So again, Mr. Vice President, through you, the Honorable Minister of Digital Transformation commented that citizens and commentators have not really questioned the overall directions or measures proposed in the budget, but rather the central debate has been around the challenges and concerns with the effectiveness and speed of implementation. That is right. People are concerned about results because they're under stress. A lot of children are out of school, people are out of jobs, and they are under stress. So the Honorable Senator, Mr. Vice President, does not have an enviable position in terms of where he now sits in getting us back to normal, because everything will be riding, by and large, on this digital highway. According to the Guardian newspaper report, 6,000 small and medium-sized businesses have closed their doors. Right here. That's a major implication for the persons who have been employed and those businesses. Where are they going to find work? Many of these small and medium enterprises depend on a dependable source of forex and, of course, some bright idea with respect to move forward. And therefore, talking about the forex, the Honourable Minister of Finance in his opening statements appeared to take objections, as he said, because I quote, he said, persons who told us in October 2015 that if we didn't immediately devalue the TT dollars, we would run out of forex in 6 months. I want the Minister of Finance to advise this Honourable House where citizens or businesses are accessing this forex, because you can't get anywhere, and a lot of our businesses are just dependent on this model of importing. And that is something, I think, if it is that one gets this digital transformation right, it brings in new idea and a fresh perspective, right? And as the Honourable Minister said through you, Mr. Vice President, he is determined to get it right. And I know I'm talking a lot about digital transformation, but because I don't know if it is his reasonable tone, Mr. Vice President, or his demeanor, and he's a Tobagonian, but I really wish him well. I wish him well. You understand? Because, again, Mr. Vice President, if you will allow me to repeat, the other minister, the central debate has been around the challenges and concerns with the effectiveness and speed of implementation. So from a practical standpoint, right here in the city, if you're walking or driving around the Queen's Park, Savannah, there are blackout zones. There are times, if I'm walking, Lady Chancellor, I multitask, and I'm on a Zoom meeting simultaneously, but there are certain areas, the connectivity does drop off. These are things, these are fixed. I don't know if they are easy fix, but these are things that are in front of our very face that perhaps we could try to fix, because we are saying, connectivity is the way to go, and it is indeed the way to go. I think it was Senator Lakshmi Dayal who spoke about some issues with, I think, TT Connect. I can tell you that my mother had gone once to request my sister, who lives abroad, birth certificate at the ministry responsible, and she got it. But I think 2 weeks ago, she needed to get the new copy, and she could not. So my sister then went to request it online. And it took her 3 days to complete the transaction because the credit card was not going through. These are just little bugbears in the system. I must say, when I pick up the phone and I called the public servants, they were very helpful. But if it is, we are saying it must be contactless and what have you, it has to be, the experience must be a smooth experience for people to buy into it, because you have an 80-year-old woman going to this place to get this birth certificate up and down and what have you. But as I said, the public servants had been really outstanding. But systems have to work to engender that trust you talk about and to be sustainable. So, again, as the Honourable Minister, through you, Vice President, said, people lose hope before they lose trust. But this digitalization is built on trust, because people have to give up of their personal information. Hence the reason, in looking at the Estonia model that the well-known technology magazine Wired had deemed the world's most advanced digital society, they have indicated that trust is the most critical component in building and participating in the digital infrastructure. Right? They say Estonia digital government is all about cooperation and reciprocities. The departments cooperate with each other to promote digitalization and win the trust of users and the people who interface. So therefore, and then another critical fact, in the year 2000, the government of Estonia declared internet access to be a human right. So now we have these black spots in 2021, but since 2000, they have been planning literally for this. You know, people don't, it's not about luck, you know, people don't stumble into things. Many times you don't even know why you're doing something. You know, you just have this idea and you are just working it. Good, so that is I was very, very surprised when I saw it was actually a human right. So it meant when the pandemic hit, many other European countries came to a halt. They did not. And if that is the vision, because it may not be COVID, but it could be something else. And given what is possible in terms of new businesses that we would not have thought about and getting young people engaged, I think the minister also said that. Now, another positive out of this whole digitalization in Estonia, when I looked at the ranking, I know we don't have the doing business ranking anymore, but I still looked at, I think, the 2019 and 2020 ranking. Estonia was ranked at number 18. And Trinidad and Tobago was 105. And there's a reason for that. It must have been because of the interaction, the collaboration, all those systems that were running and connected that would have made it so easy. If one would have gone through how quickly you could connect with electricity or with water, etc., I am sure we would have been stunned by what the data and statistics is telling us. So Mr. Vice President, this brings me to where the Minister of Finance in 2020 to 2021, the national budget, announced a notable change in the corporation tax incentive, which is to further encourage SMEs to access to access equity financing and view listing on the TTSE, Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, as a viable option. Now, this has been going on for a very long time, and I think there were only two companies that were listed in 2012 and none since. So basically, I mean, they have all these concessions. We have to ask ourselves, why aren't these businesses moving towards or really accessing what could be in effect cheaper source of financing? A lot of these small micro enterprises, they start with savings or family helping and so on. So by the time they get to the end of one period, money has run out, because if things don't go to according to plan, there's no money for the second round of purchasing, restocking. It's because this is money many times people are living on, they're paying their bills on, and they have to run their business at the same time. So we have to, and a lot of people have very good ideas and they can do with a boost of capital that is not too expensive. One has to ask themselves, why aren't our citizens, I mean, we are so entrepreneurial, everybody like a little business, they have some little something going on, but yet there is a difficulty with the private sector opening up their books to do this thing called a prospectus and approach the stock exchange. And I think, even just a year ago or so, we were here with some amendment to the bill. I'm saying it has to be more than just throwing more concessions, and these concessions are given at the cost to taxpayers because it's revenue foregone by taxpayers. So one has to ask, and this is where I think sometimes in terms of a budget statement or reading the budget, it will be helpful if one said, okay, well, we came with the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, this idea to boost it because it is thinly traded, etc. Where do we go from here? And we are here, we have approached, because maybe instead of just asking people to come, you have to find them, the ones you think on the outside look as if they have the most potential, and you work with them to get to that point and say you're only going to get these concessions if you are going to, the end of this road is that you are going to be listed. You know, because many times we give these concessions for people to export. Where does this forex they earn go? Does it stay in some bank abroad and it's not repatriated here? All of these are things we have to look at, because at the end of the day, the citizens are foregoing something for folks to get these very generous concessions at time. So, Mr. Vice President, the prevailing economic challenges due to the pandemic, they have brought about many uncertainties. Research from the CSO shows that approximately 11% of SME startup funding comes from the bank, which is fairly expensive funding. The remaining derived from personal and family savings. And as I said before, this can soon run out. So listing on the stock exchange creates an avenue for smaller organizations to access the capital that is needed, especially against the backdrop of these hard financial and economic times. So, you know, one can encourage and say, you can use the money raised by the IPO to pay down debt and release funds for reinvestment. But it may not just be a good idea to just talk to people. One may have to do a bit of hand-holding. In addition, for those who are looking for new avenues, you know, there were, I think the minister spoke about a lot of agro-processing. There was a bit of investment in that. But there are other things we can do, like recycling, coding, well, more agriculture, because, you know, you see all along the road, you see pawpaw, you see pineapple, you see a lot of fruits. Again, in South Korea, what they did, they took all of these fruits and created skincare products. They create masks to the face. People have all these fancy, what they call it, K-beauty, right? A lot of these masks and things that really are doing anything for your face, but it sells. It's a $5 billion industry. No, it does nothing for your face, right? This thing just sits on top of your face. But it sells. It's all fun, like bear and pig and this and that. We are very creative and we have all of these fruits. We can do the same thing, Mr. Vice President. Again, earlier this year, we debated the Economic Partnership Agreement, Bill 2021, and this provides for the implementation of the Economic Partnership Agreement between the Caribbean Forum, CARIFORUM states, and the United Kingdom of Great Britain. Now, I take these things seriously when we come here, and I believe that what we were doing was opening an avenue for the citizens of this country. Very recently, I think it was last week, it is reported that there's a labor shortage in the UK. Well, there's also one in the US. And they're saying it's in the food industry, and potentially Christmas turkeys are all amongst the items made scarce in Britain because of a lack of workers. I don't know if the Honourable Minister, through you, Mr. Vice President, would have approached the British High Commission, because they're about to hire 5,000 foreign truck drivers and 5,500 poultry workers and give them visas to work in the UK for 3 months, because they are desperate. They have been culling pigs because they can't get butchers. I don't know how hard or how long it takes to train somebody to become a butcher, but we have a lot of people who are out of work. And these are things we have to pick up on, and we have to be nimble and run at it. And many citizens, I'm sure, will be willing to go to the UK, because this is transmittances, you know. I mean, you have a lot of countries in Asia, etc., that they literally run their economy on these remittances from abroad, right? So we need to be nimble. England is saying they need butchers and truck drivers, and the same is true for America, because they have a lot of backup on the ports in the US. They have, last week I saw the president address that, the inflation is out of control, and they are having the same issue that we are having here, because a shortage of truck drivers has added to the supply chain constraints. That's in the US also, making the delivery of goods to consumers even more costly and slow. Now, the Minister of Works and Transport don't want truck drivers on the road. So let's export some, because we have some of the best truck drivers. I see them flying all over the road. You know, they appear to be very expert at what they do. Why don't we try and get some of them out so they can make an honest living? Mr. Vice President, the Minister of Finance because now we want to talk about some short-term jobs in the construction sector, is of the view that a merger of the Trinidad and Tobago Mortgage Finance Company Limited and the Home Mortgage Bank, I'm repeating, will create adequate synergies to ensure improved alignment with the delivery of government's national housing program. They'll make a stronger customer value proposition and increase shareholder value. Greater mortgage loan availability will lead to a larger financing turnover in the mortgage sector and a gradual reduction in the demand for housing unit. the minister is talking about creating, I think, in the process, creating one entity called the Trinidad and Tobago Mortgage Bank. Mr. Vice President, I can tell the minister here today, without fear of contradiction, he could bring all the banks in Trinidad and Tobago and make it one bank. That will not solve the problem. The problem at the HDC is that good title in many cases cannot pass. There are a lot of the documentation that is outstanding. The Minister has said of Finance, that is, Honourable Minister, through you, Mr. Vice President, there's a backlog of 175 applicants. And that database in 2015, the last time I heard about it, was about the same size. And the following obtained, 51% were low income with a monthly income of a spread between $2,500 to $6,000. So that speaks to design and cost of the house. 20% lower to middle income, monthly income of $6,000 to $11,000, and 13% upper middle income, monthly income of $11,000 to $25,000 per month. And beyond that, there might have been a joint income of over $25,000 to about $40,000. So, Mr. Vice President, in this fiscal, I've seen that there is, which is usual over the years, for an allocation for the Infrastructure Development Fund by the government. There's been zero for the HDC. But yet, I'm hearing it announced that they are going to mobilize some new construction and complete some ongoing construction. I don't know if maybe the Minister of Finance has signed a guarantee for them to raise funding from the private bank. I did take note that at the Standing Finance Committee, the Minister of Housing did not have a specific breakdown of units, but claimed that over the last 6 years, 5,000 units had been handed over. Now, I am going to give the Minister the benefit of the doubt, but I think that maybe she probably was reading her notes incorrectly. And there is, I think the Honourable Minister of Housing, the other place, Mr. Vice President, projected that there will be 7,000 housing units built in 2022. Again, I don't know if that is possible given the fundamentals, because in 2010, for instance, what had happened in 2010, there were about 53 different sites they had no building approvals, they had no statutory approvals, no EMA, no town and country, fire, water, drainage division, TNTEC. None of the approvals were there. So there were many houses being constructed, but the approvals were not there. So what happened is...
Senator, you have 5 more minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. So what happened is that good title couldn't pass because these were there. People had to then design as built now to start. So from 2011, an aggressive exercise was undertaken where site by site, the HDC undertook to develop all the required drawings, secure statutory approvals, install wastewater plants. There were considerable wastewater plants being constructed. I want to give you a better number than considerable. I think it was 28 wastewater plants being constructed. And just to give you an idea, for instance, Edinburgh South Shogunas, the contract date at the time was 2007, but the wastewater plant was completed in 2012. Carson Field, contract date 2007, wastewater plant 2012. La Fortune 2006, wastewater plant 2015, Olive Station. What that meant, that went on and on. It meant that persons were being allocated the houses, but the title could not have passed. So the HDC at the time gave a document called the License to Occupy. And that license to occupy, what it did, the citizen, the person, the homeowner, the new homeowner would have made a deposit. The HDC did not retain any of the payments. That was sent straight to the TTMF. But by the time you got the titles organized, the people's circumstances would have changed, and it would have taken a much longer time for them to be able to go and really purchase the house, complete the mortgage arrangement. So I am, to you, Mr. Vice President, I'm urging the Minister of Finance, if he's going to give any guarantee or what have you, ensure that the fundamentals are in place, because at that time, the value of about $7.4 billion in real estate, when after one would have done all that I said, the 33 sites which were organized, the value was $7.4 billion. And I'm certain that a lot of that money has not been converted because the occupiers of those units now at this time, I can't give a particular percentage because I've not been there a long time. They were not able to convert because their circumstances would have changed. People would have lost their jobs. If they would have come and applied as a couple, now they are single. So you had all of these issues, and you just had to have people just sitting in these houses and not being able to pass. Good title. Mr. Vice President, how much do I have? A minute at all?
Finish at 4:24, so you have about 2 minutes.
2 minutes? Mm-hmm. I thank you for but I just wanted to, I'm hearing everybody talking about the environment, etc., and I don't want to get into that debate, but there was a time, Mr. Vice President, when I was the Minister of Tourism, Transport and Tobago Affairs, and I had to go and meet with the then Chief Secretary. I represented the UNC government in Tobago. And Mr. Chief Secretary then will say, Ms. John, when you come, may I see you? And I'll tell the Chief Secretary, you will not come to me. I'll come to you, Chief Secretary, because in Tobago, we grew up to respect each other. And maybe that is what it is all about, just us having that respect. Sometimes the debate gets a little corrosive, and then it is really not at all useful. Mr. Vice President, I thank you so much for the opportunity.
Senator Lazama Leasing.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Vice President, for the opportunity to join this debate on the presentation of the budget package for fiscal 2022. Permit me, please, to begin my debate by expressing my gratitude to the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago for having safely steered this country over the past 18 months through the pandemic of the COVID-19 virus, through the economic crisis, and through the unrelenting challenges of dealing with a very, very, very difficult and unwilling to look after the interests of the people of Trinidad and Tobago opposition party. I wish to express my congratulations to the Minister of Finance, the Honourable Colm Imbert, as well as to the Minister of Planning and Development, the Honourable Camille Robinson-Regis, for their excellence in preparing this budget titled Resilience in the Face of a Pandemic. I want to thank all of those ministers who would have spoken before and who reported to the people of Trinidad and Tobago on their performances in their portfolios. I also wish to express my gratitude to the independent senators because many of their contributions hold great merit in this debate. Mr. Vice President, again, for the second consecutive year, I have heard a regurgitated speech coming from the opposition. In the other place, we would have had a response from the leader of the opposition there, and the response was cut up into several little pieces over here and just dished out and divvied out by the members here, which tells me, Mr. Vice President, that the opposition continues to show the country that it is bereft of ideas. Permit me, please, Mr. Vice President, to respond to some of the comments that would have been put into the public domain throughout the course of this debate. Mr. Vice President, every single opposition speaker, probably save and except for the person who spoke immediately before me, went along with the theme of a declaration of war against the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Vice President, let me tell you what is a declaration of war against the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. You see the same legislative gridlock and paralysis that Senator Timal spoke about?